I need my romances where like the characters call each other pet names. Like I need that. I need you to call them a cute pet name. And even if that pet name is like seaweed brain, like it's fine. What can I say? I'm a basic bitch. Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Andrew. I did something very exciting that you already know if you clicked on the title of this video, but I finished the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan, which is a very, very popular series. This series was just so fun. And I know that it follows, one of my favorite things ever is when a author just creates a world with tons of prequels and sequels and just, you know, if you like the world, then it's just so exciting to have multiple series in that world. I did this last year where I did the first 9 like Shadowhunter books. So I did like the Infernal Devices and the Mortal Instruments, and I ranked like my enjoyment of them. And I did that last year. So I will leave that linked up there for you to check out if you are interested. It was my first video ever. So, you know, but I actually think I would stand by that ranking to this day. But you know, I am planning to reread, we'll see. But here we're talking about Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. So, and as these are published by Disney's book group, which I never knew that. I never knew Disney had like a book publishing house. I didn't know that existed. But if you didn't know, the Percy Jackson series is published by Disney Hyperion, which is obviously owned by Disney. And I'm wearing a necklace with waves on it because if you also don't know, Percy is a demigod and he is the son of Poseidon, which I am going to also tell you, this is going to be a full spoiler-filled series review, series discussion. I'm not holding back on anything spoilery. So if you have not read Percy Jackson, you're probably the one person in the world who hasn't. But I want to do the similar thing that I did with the Cassandra Clare books, and I'm going to rank them from least favorite to favorite, and then I'm kind of going to talk about the series as a whole. I'm going to talk a little bit about the series here at the beginning because I just think that it's just such a fun adventure. And I know there's a lot of people that say like, oh, you can't read like the Percy Jackson books when you're older because like this is written for a young audience. And I would just like to point out that in this series there are deaths of plenty of characters, and Mr. Riordan does not use a resurrection trope at any point, and I feel like the strengths in this series are the character arcs. Like the way that you start off feeling about one character is just, you're gonna just have stronger feelings, whether that be positively or negatively, probably by the end of the series. So for those of you that have not picked it up, I would encourage you, if you've been holding back, like they are, I would say the humor in the series is a little childish. And there's quite a bit of toilet humor, if you will, especially in certain books within the series, but I will get into that when I talk about my ranking for them. But I think that overall, this is a very, very worthwhile series that I think is definitely worth the read. I've heard even better things about the following series that Rick has written, and I'm very excited to continue. And you can expect plenty of Rick Riordan content on my channel as well. I think that the way that he started off his series, I picked up this first book, I don't even know how many times, but I got lucky and I was able to get all of the audiobooks through the library, with the exception of the final book. I just bought it because it was like a 2-month wait through the library. But I was able to get books 1 through 4 through the library for absolutely free, which, you know, you should really utilize your libraries, people. You should really, they're amazing. They're amazing. But I would just like to point out, I think that the first book sets a really good precedent for the tone of the series overall and the lighthearted, fun adventures that you can expect to go on in the series. And the beginning of the book says, we're just going to get into it. It says, "Look, I didn't want to be a half-blood. If you're reading this because you think you might be one, my advice is close this book right now. Believe whatever lie your mom or dad told you about your birth and try to lead a normal life." And I I just love that because you're telling me like to close the book. So like, I'm not going to close the book. I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. I'm a rebel, you know? Like, again, like I feel like people should give this a chance if they think it's not for them. But I understand. And even though this whole series is middle grade, he has following series that are much more young adult, which, I mean, I haven't read them, so I can't confirm that. But let's get into my ranking. So in last place, we have what might be a controversial opinion, but it's going to be book number 3, The Titan's Curse. So the reason I'm putting this so low is, to be honest with you, I was just kind of confused, and there's like this whole situation with Talia and Zoe, and one of them dies and I didn't even realize like who had died. I think that this suffers really, really bad from like middle book syndrome. But and as I was like reading this book, I went to go read reviews, as some people do, and I was feeling a little justified in my decision because I did see multiple reviews that said like it took me a really long time to read this, or like it took me 8 months to read this, or something along the lines of like, I think that this book really, really suffers from like secondhand embarrassment, because there's the whole situation with like Bessie being this like moo cow, and it just was a little bit too childish. Like it was just a little too childish in my opinion, as someone who is almost 30 years old. I'm just going to say I think the middle third of this book was like kind of a chore to get through. But the end and I feel really like, I know like Nico is introduced in this book and Bianca's introduced in this book. And I think, just to be clear, I think like Bianca and Nico have amazing, like they're written really well, and I think that they're great. And I think that it's really sad what happens, obviously, with Bianca, and the way Nico reacts to it is really, really good, like character development, like the way he wrote what happened with Nico and like his sister, and just like the whole situation was fantastic. And then at the very end, when Percy meets Aphrodite and like all these other gods, and they have like a whole council, like that was fantastic. But like, I just have to like, this was to me the weakest in the series, which I feel like is a very unpopular opinion, because most people have this as like first or second favorite in the series, but this is my ranking, so absolutely feel free to fight me. But that's where I'm gonna put this one, at the bottom. I'm so sorry. All right, then my 4th least favorite would be The Sea of Monsters, which is most people's least favorite overall. But I think maybe for me the issue was expectations, which is such an interesting conversation when you talk about expectations, because I think that I had such low expectations for this book, because I have heard multiple times that it is people's least favorite in the series. But there's so many amazing things that happen in this book. Like Grover wears a wedding dress. Like Clarice has to be the one to lead the quest. And in the first book, you like hate Clarice, but then she gets this like character development where Percy's forced to like be nice with her. And then, you know, you have Grover talking about how they like find the golden fleece, which is, and then there's that whole thing with Luke, and they have that whole battle, and it was just such a good book. Like it was way better than everybody says that it is. And they go into the Sea of Monsters, and I don't know, man, I'm just a sucker for like when you utilize your title in your books. Like I don't know, man, which I guess I'm sure they all have that, but this was just way better than everybody says it is. I feel like I think this was well written. I think it was just a really good second book. And we have to talk about Tyson. I love Tyson. I love everything Tyson represents. The fact that Percy meets this like Cyclops, and he's like, oh my gosh, like y'all need to be nice to him. Like you need to be good to like him just because he's Cyclops, like whatever. But then when he finds out that like the Cyclops is actually his half brother, he like kind of denies that they are brothers, and then he starts to feel bad, like internally about it, which like he should feel bad about it, and he should like actually not have a bias against Cyclops, and like just everything that, and then he's like the reason that they get saved at the end. Like I love Tyson in this whole series, and I feel like it was just so good, man. But like it has to be at the bottom because the other ones are just even better. So moving on. So my third favorite is going to be The Lightning Thief, which is the first book in the series, which I obviously think it does a really, really, really good job of setting up the vibe, the tone. I think that it's so fun. Like I remember it so well. They talk about how you're like, when it's just so fun in the first book when you're like discovering everything about this world and it's all new to Percy, and he's got like this conversation with Chiron, and Chiron is like, oh, like the Greek myths like moved with Western civilization as it is, and they talk about like architecture and how like, and you find out about Talia and like her being that tree to protect the camp, and then and like the whole situation when you're learning about like the agreement with like Zeus and Hades and Poseidon, and like how they weren't supposed to have kids, but then you find out they've all had kids because they just can't help themselves, I guess. But like, and then they think that Percy is like the one that stole the lightning bolt. Like they think he's a lightning thief, and he has to like go into underworld to like talk to Hades about it. Like it was just so good. It was so good. It was such a good introduction to the series. And like Mount Olympus being at the Empire State Building, there's just fun. A Medusa happening in here, the Locust Hotel being introduced in here, which becomes relevant in future books, obviously. Like the Locust Hotel, that place where they're like stuck for like only a few hours, but turns out to be, I'm a sucker for when time moves differently in whatever place. Like time moves differently in the underworld, or time moves differently in this hotel, or time moves differently in like the ferry, whatever. Like I love that shit, okay? I just love it. And of course, like he talks about how all of the demigods have like ADHD, and it's actually like one of the things that makes them strong. Like this is such a good introduction. Did I already say the part about Medusa showing up in here? I just absolutely love like the Greek myths that he weaves into these tales, and like makes it like super fun with like the characters. But I think I was a child when this was published, so I wish that I had joined in on the hype. Also, the whole situation with Luke being developed in this book, and how you don't actually know that he is like evil. It was such a good plot twist. Like it was just so unexpected. I didn't see it coming at all, and I absolutely loved it so much. And this is just, I've said it before, I'll say it again. It was just such a good installment in the series. Okay, I don't know what else to tell you. I gave this one 5 stars, and the 2 following I also gave 5 stars. So just the whole, like the prophecies going on and like the quest, and how like he'll do all these, like Percy will do all these things and he'll get into trouble, and then they'll be like on the news, and then it's like, oh, like and you have like the mist, which is like hiding what's actually happening from the mortals, which like I'm also a sucker for, okay? Like I just love that bullshit, okay? What can I say? I'm a basic bitch. Now, let's talk about number 2, The Battle of the Labyrinth. So this is the 4th book in the series. And so now you know who number 1 is, obviously, because there's only 5 books in the series. But number 4 is The Battle of the Labyrinth. And this had so many amazing parts to it. Like, where do I begin? What can I even say? I don't know, man. This was just amazing because Annabeth is leading the quest now. So in the Battle of the Labyrinth, which I'm pretty sure we're introduced to Rachel in the 3rd book, I'm pretty sure. But in this one, she's like a little bit more prominent of a role, and there's some annoying love triangle stuff that happens in this book, whatever. But I'm not gonna lie, it did make it a little bit more entertaining to read, which sucks because we all hate love triangles, but it did make it a little bit more interesting. But also I hate it because Percabeth for life. Like, why would you not? There's no chemistry between Rachel and Percy. Like, they just only were together because of like forced convenience. And like Percy and Rachel doesn't even call Percy any pet names. Okay, like I need my romances where like the characters call each other pet names. Like I need that. I need you to call them a cute pet name. And even if that pet name is like seaweed brain, like it's fine. But this one, you have Annabeth leading the quest. You have a labyrinth, which like lives next to the camp, and there's all these like weird ways to get into it, which makes it like a character itself. And I love when like the actual place itself becomes a character. That's just another thing that I'm a sucker for. Okay, like there's so many storytelling tropes in these books that I am just a sucker for, and I'm not sorry. I did find that unfortunately that there was still some like toilet humor in these books, but like whatever. In this book specifically also, like just the whole scene with like the farm and like, you know, wasn't my favorite, but I loved all the stuff that happened with Calypso and her island, and her whole story was so sad and tragic, and how like Percy goes there to like heal and all that stuff. Like that was really sad, but a great story. And then let's talk about Grover's like experience with Pan and how he finds Pan, but then Pan is like, I'm no longer gonna exist. Like it needs to be you, like leading all these things. I just love that. Okay, I just love when it's like, oh, you yourself were the hero the whole time. Yes. And of course, like the actual battle that happens, I feel like Uncle Rick wrote a really good like battle scene moment in here, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to give the number one spot to The Last Olympian, the final book in the series. Probably the most basic bitch opinion I can get. So we started off with a very unpopular opinion, but we are ending with what I would, based off the Goodreads rating, the most popular opinion that I have. This was epic. This was amazing. This had so many things that I love. Nico's character in here, Nico's situation with his father. This book, man, where do I begin? This book is action-packed from page one, which like I wish that, you know, I mean, most of the books are pretty plot heavy. And the whole scene at the beginning where he goes into the ocean, like meets his, like sees his father and all that good stuff. And his father is like, oh, you need to go like learn the actual prophecy now and go talk to Chiron about it. Tell him it's time. I love that shit, man. Like, it's time. It's like, in addition to Nico's backstory, and what happens with that, we also get more into Luke's history and how Luke ends up how the way he is, and how all those events in the past, whatever. I'm going to get to the end of this book because I absolutely fucking loved it. The whole situation where, you know, they win the battle and all that amazing stuff happens, and the gods are like, okay, Percy, like, you can have anything you want. And he's like, and they're like, we can make you a god. Like, you can literally become a god, which is what so many people in this world want. And he was like, no, I just want you to pay attention to your children. I just want you to acknowledge your kids and pay attention to them. It was fucking brilliant. It was such a good way to end the book or the series. And let's talk about Luke, who, as I said, his development and his backstory, also fascinating. And the prophecy that we have about like how someone's gonna die and by some sort of blade or whatever it was, and then turns out Luke who's being possessed by Kronos, which is just a whole thing. Come to find out, like, Percy just gives his knife to Luke, and then Luke like stabs himself, and it's really sad. And the whole situation when like Nico like forces Percy like down into the underworld because he wants to learn and he wants to know more, but then by him doing that thing and like getting Percy caught, he doesn't actually get the answers that he wants. Like, so good. Like, saying that doing those things or trying to get those results that you want, like trying to hurt your friends, won't necessarily yield the result, like the answers that you want. Clarice. Okay, we talked about Clarice in book 2 and how I really like her. Okay, I love her as a character in the book. And Clarice has a petty moment of like, I don't want to participate and I don't want to do this shit, whatever, because of reasons. But she comes in and she saves the fucking day, and her father is proud of her, and it's just amazing. It's just amazing. Okay, also we have to talk about Rachel becoming the Oracle, because that was another iconic moment. Okay, like all of your characters get iconic moments, and like Grover being on the council, iconic moment, just amazing. Like I don't know what else to say. Like it was such a good tie-in to all the previous like books in the series, because there were just so many moments when you would hear Percy's thoughts being like, oh, back in like year 2 I met like the Fates, or back in this year, or back in year 2 like Clarice helped save the day, or I got the golden fleece, or whatever, or I met Calypso. And like I don't think that becomes relevant in the 5th book, but the tying up of loose ends was so good. And I have to say, like the battle scenes in here, I think again were just written really well. Super engaging, action-packed. I think that Rick Riordan has a way of writing that makes it so easy to like picture it in your head. And I don't know how he does it, to be honest with you, but the fact of how popular he is, I think kind of shows you. So, okay, also I'm not sure if it was the 4th book or which book it was introduced. I want to say in the 4th book we're introduced to Blowfish, and Percy's mom is like really happy with Blowfish, and I'm pretty sure it's this book where he like asked Percy if they can get married, or maybe that was the 4th book, but I don't know. Either way, it was in my top 2 books. You know, when you just binge a series, they blend together kind of a lot. But let's also talk about Annabeth and Luke, because we again get a glimpse into Annabeth's history with Luke. I want to say in this book, I can't remember. We learned that how Luke and Annabeth meet, and of course the entire time Annabeth never loses faith in Luke and that he will do the right thing. And I just think it was beautiful. I think there was just so many beautiful moments in this particular book that just wrapped up everything so beautifully, exactly how I like my series to end. And the whole making sure you pay attention to your children is quite clear. The possibilities of the future series, which I will be reading for sure. And I hope that, because I said earlier before about expectations, I'm hoping that I will enjoy those more than this year's, because I did enjoy it a lot, but I think I would have enjoyed it much more as a 12-year-old. But it is what it is. I really enjoyed this series. I think that it does a really good job of teaching people about Greek myths and mythology, and it's super fun, and there are a lot of really good adventures. And yeah, I would love to know your personal ranking of the series, what your favorite book is in the series, if you disagree with me or not. I'm sure there will be plenty of people who disagree on my opinions. I know book 3 has some serious stands that will defend it forever. Don't get me wrong, I still enjoyed book 3. There was a lot of important characters introduced in book 3. There was a lot. I'm sorry, I'm defending this to who, to why, but I still enjoyed them all for sure. I would love it for you to discuss it with me in the comments. I will also leave my Instagram and my Goodreads and my Twitter all in the description as well, so you can feel free to follow me on my journey as I continue through the Riordan verse, as they call it, and see my thoughts. And yeah, I definitely want to finish all of his books, and I want to do a tier ranking of all of his books, as I did with Cassandra Clare's books, which I will also link that up there. Yep, that is all I have to say for this video. So I would love to know your thoughts. Have a great day. Bye.